Hey everyone, it's Lynn Durham, and you're listening to Create Magic at Work. Create Magic at Work is on a mission to equip senior leaders with tools they need to be a true quantum leader and actually understand what that means. Improve employee engagement, retain top talent, and transform your workplace culture to have less drama and stress. So let's start making magic. Hey, Magic listeners, I have something special for you today. Instead of being your host, I'm stepping into the guest seat. I was recently interviewed on the Conscious Habit podcast with host Amy Woodall. Double the Amy, double the magic. In this episode, we dive deep into meaningful topics that I know you'll find helpful. We explore my journey from corporate leadership to becoming the founder of Create Magic at Work, an executive coaching firm that blends spiritual intelligence with elevated leadership practices to uplift workplace cultures. We discuss the transformative power of bringing whimsy, childlike playfulness, and profound spiritual insights into professional settings, making a more compassionate and connected environment for everyone. We talk about how diffusing ego-driven responses and nurturing genuine human connections can lead to greater understanding and kindness in your life and in your work. This was such a powerful conversation with Amy, and I'm thrilled to share it with all of you. So get ready to dive into the magic with me as I switch roles from host to guest and enjoy this special episode.
Conscious Habit listeners, we have one of the new partners of People Forward Network joining us today, but she is no newbie in her podcast. Amy Lynn Durham is the founder of Create Magic at Work, and she is also a facilitator when it comes to spiritual intelligence. She's got a lot of wisdom to share with us today, and I cannot wait to learn from her. Amy Lynn, welcome to the Conscious Habit podcast.
Thanks for having me, Amy. I just realized we're going to be like, Amy.
It's the Amy and Amy show.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I have heard just incredible things about you and the work that you're doing in the world. I love when people who are just doing conscious work, but in such different ways, get to come together and like learn from each other. And I'm just so like leaning into what you're doing and so fascinated by the work that you're doing in the world. And so I'd love for you to just share with the audience as we kick off every episode. We want to ask our interviewees what consciousness means to you. So when you hear that word, Amy Lynn, what resonates?
I don't know if this is exactly what it means to me, but like when you say that, I immediately go to unity consciousness. Like, what does it mean that where we are all connected, where we are all one, where I am you?
Unity consciousness, all things everywhere, all at once, connected. Is this something that you've always fundamentally believed? Because I think this works its way into your work too. Is this a belief system you've always had? Or can you share with me a little bit of your journey on this belief that everything is connected?
Yeah, it absolutely is not something that I've always had. I was such a brat in my 20s. I had some moments in my life that were not pleasant. And some people might call them the dark night of the soul, maybe a few of those times. And looking back, I think those moments really cracked me open to know that I am not immune from life happening to someone, for someone. And that really helped me have my spiritual awakening. Like one day I just had this moment. I know some people don't have this moment, so I don't want to talk about it like I had a spiritual awakening, right? Because sometimes it's just this beautiful trajectory. But I really did. I had a moment, a day that I felt just really cracked open. I was going through some really rough times in my life. And I went and saw a healer. I was at like my wit's end trying to break through. And I did. And it took a while to get there. But that moment changed my life. I had a chakra clearing that I had never even heard of before. This was in my like early 30s. And I walked out of there and I did some regression therapy as well during that time. Never even heard of it. Just had this huge moment in there. And I walked out of there and my entire life changed. I mean, the colors of the trees were brighter. I had so many things going on in my life. I used to be known, Amy, as the bad luck girl. Truly, just everywhere I went, I'd park my car, the glass would get shattered, and a purse would get ripped out because I'd leave my purse in there. I was so absent-minded. People would say to me, "Gosh, I don't want your luck." Like those were like the statements that were said to me, and yeah, I my life really changed, and I think part of thinking back, it's like the universe will whisper. And if you know that quote, the universe will whisper, and if you don't hear it whispering, it's going to scream. I'm one of those people that needed to be screamed at to wake up. And and I got screamed at. But that's a whole other show. So I stepped into this whole new world of really understanding why I was here, what I was here to do, and what the deeper meaning is in life and what the gifts were in the stressful times.
It's always interesting to hear people's path too, because for some people, it is a slow kind of getting to understanding whatever their level of consciousness is. Everybody's on a different path. It's very unique. For some people, it's very abrupt. And it's like one moment in a day, everything was clear. They knew, they saw life differently. And we've heard everything on the show from like at 13, I had my spiritual awakening, which I was like, wow. Like, nope, that wasn't my journey. All the way to we recently had a guest on that shared that she was in her late 30s when she just experienced like an instant unity consciousness. So I think it's so fascinating of like what helps us along our path and then what inspires the work that we do. So at that point in time in your life, what kind of work were you doing and what led you to then stepping into create magic at work?
For a couple of decades, I worked in the corporate space. I ran 90 telecom retail locations throughout the state of California. I had a little over 400 employees. I was also the president of our nationwide women's group. And it was just something I couldn't sustain for much longer. I could feel it in my soul that this just isn't something I can sustain, not because it was this horrible, toxic environment. I actually worked with amazing people. I mean, we're still all connected to this day. It was the system, right? Like the system of Excel spreadsheets every month trying to exceed quota. And then it gets raised again, answering to the shareholder, traveling all the time. I just really felt like my creativity was being stifled. And I could tell that my team needed more connection. So here in my personal life, I had this awakening and I started bringing these activities that I was doing at home to work and I started incorporating them with my team. And in hindsight, they were spiritually intelligent exercises, helping people tap into their spiritual intelligence from a faith neutral lens. And I knew I was going to leave my job. And so I wanted to leave on top because I didn't want people to say, oh, she couldn't hang. Or like, all of I'm kind of competitive. And also at the same time wanted to prove that you can succeed in positive ways without pitting people against each other in unhealthy ways. And that's what I did. I did all of those activities with my team. I didn't tell anybody that I was planning to leave for a year. It was really about how am I going to leave and what do I want to leave behind as I move forward. And I took all those activities and I put them in Create Magic at Work, the book, and I started Create Magic at Work, the brand. And it is not that simple and easy as I just said it at all. But here we are today. Yeah.
It's always like when we have to sum up our story, we're like, it sounds very simple, but let me tell you the complicated journey that comes along with that. So in a nutshell, tell us what is Create Magic at Work? What is the work that you're doing in the world? And tell us about the type of clients that you work with as well.
Yeah, Create Magic at Work was really born from the book, and it was designed to bring childlike, whimsical feelings, playfulness really back to the workplace. I joke that I wrote it for the beer drinking golf guys I used to work with.
The frat bros of the
Yeah,
corporate world.
yeah, exactly. Um, because they were amazing. They had the biggest hearts and they just needed a place to start. So it's kind of a really beautiful creative jumping off point. So that happened, and then I got my executive coaching certification from UC Berkeley. And yeah, Create Magic at Work is private coaching, workshops, training, and products, all surrounding going beyond EQ into the spiritual intelligence space from a faith neutral lens.
Well, let's dig into that. First of all, I love that you keep saying faith neutral because I think that's important for people to know and hear because we say spirit. And a lot of times our ego can be hooked by the word spirit. And I know that ego is a part of the work that you do in spiritual intelligence. But to me, ego means that little voice within that needs to make right and wrong and has a lot of judgment and is very protective. It's not all bad, but it's like there is a means of protection. And so there's times we might hear someone share a belief system that doesn't jive with ours and the little ego says that's wrong, that's bad, I can't have that. That's, rather than tapping into what's a higher truth that could go beyond kind of that block that I'm creating. So many of us know emotional intelligence. I don't want to say all of us. I don't want to take that for granted, but many of us know emotional intelligence. And what you're doing is spiritual intelligence. My gut says they go hand in hand. Can you kind of describe the connection between the two and then also the difference?
In some of the teachings, we get to spiritual intelligence through emotional intelligence. So if you imagine a pyramid and the bottom of it's kind of similar to Maslow's hierarchy, I guess. But if you imagine the bottom of the pyramid's like your physical intelligence, and then the next layer is like your IQ, the next layer is your EQ, your emotional intelligence, and then the top is your SQ, your spiritual intelligence. So I like to share that because you can use it for a daily visual and also for a lifetime visual example. So let's say I was who I was in my 20s and I was out drinking all night and I showed up to this interview. My physical intelligence would not be where it needed to be, let alone my emotional, right? So when all three are at peak, we can really tap into our spiritual intelligence. However, the goal is that we can access higher self even during stressful times. So that's why the 21 skills of spiritual intelligence are so important to the work with Create Magic at Work. And those were designed by Cindy Wigglesworth. That's a framework and a tool and a philosophy that I use with the brand because it gives leaders in the workplace, it gives us these tangible tools we can look at, these tangible skills we can look at and skill build in. I love woo woo and I love ethereal. I love it. But for leaders in the workplace, it kind of takes that like woo woo out of it. And it's like, here's these hardcore skills that I can like skill build in. So it frames it for them. Most people can have a pretty decent level of emotional intelligence by their early to mid 20s. I'm generalizing, but am I self aware? Do I have an emotional management strategy? Can I build connections? Yeah, my EQ is probably pretty good. I can have compassion for others. My brain is developed enough to experience that. SQ, according to the adult development theory, and again, I'm generalizing because I love how you mentioned the 13-year-old that had the spiritual awakening because we're all human and there's exceptions, right? But the part of our life where we start exploring, like, why am I here? Like, what's my life purpose? Am I living in alignment with who I really think I am? And maybe I should make some changes towards that if I'm not. That's kind of the beginning steps.
And I love that you bring the tactical because you're right. I think people love and can appreciate the deeper sense of meaning and just the psychological aspects or of what we might talk about that then can fold into the spiritual aspects, but to have something that's like objective, tangible, People love metrics too. They can be like, oh, I can measure where I started versus where I go, getting that left brain mixed in with the right brain. And so when you're working with teams, let's kind of just look at potentially like a case study. What are some of the things that teams, where might they be in their journey where they might say, this spiritual intelligence stuff might be something that we consider based on where we are versus where we'd like to be?
So I've done all kinds of different teams and workshops, and the overarching theme, if I were to generalize it, is how do I put my ego aside and exercise more wisdom and compassion for myself and others? And here are some ways to tap into higher self. So it goes through like explaining what ego is, like you just explained earlier, that place within you that comes from maybe fear, defensiveness, all of those things. Understanding who's in the driver's seat between ego and higher self. Who's running the show here? Is it my higher self or my ego? With spiritual intelligence, you can be atheist, you can be agnostic, as long as you believe there's a place within you that comes from wisdom and compassion and love that you can access. You can skill build in the 21 skills of SQ. So the Create Magic at Work products, that sounds like deep inner work, right? Like some of it is this deep inner work. Like some of the skills are like being a calming and healing presence, making wise and compassionate decisions, being a wise and effective change agent, seeking guidance from higher self, operating from higher self. There's experiences of transcendent oneness, right? Those are all some of the skills. Like you could work on one skill your whole life. So it can be deep, and it is deep inner work. So the Create Magic at Work products bring some fun and play into it. So for example, if you want to work on accessing your higher self a little bit more of the time, practice seeking guidance from higher self, practice operating from higher self, I designed a journal prompt card deck. Close your eyes, pull a message from the universe, you get an affirmation, and then 2 coaching questions that you can journal on. I always recommend rapid writing to help put your ego aside. Just whatever comes out, just blah it on the paper. That's an exercise I do a lot in. That's a fun one I'm sharing that I do a lot in workshops. You would not believe the magic that comes from that, because I'm getting all into this journal prompt card moment right now with you. So I take the deck and I have the person close their eyes and pull a card, and it's inevitable that they get the message meant for them. Chills come up across their arms. Grown men get tears in their eyes. It's incredible. So it's like seeing in this room, everyone's seeing the humanity in each other, and then they're reading their message out loud sometimes, or they're sharing what they wrote afterwards if they're comfortable with it. And it's one of the most beautiful moments. I'm just like honored to be in, really. And that is what improves productivity. Not to get back to like the business, but that is what improves productivity and profitability in the workplace, is people understanding, oh, just like me, this person is trying to avoid pain. Just like me, this person is trying to experience joy, just like me. And then let me call Amy after this because I just heard she was going through something, and see if I can offer help on her project.
I want to really break that down because spiritual intelligence, you've said it's sort of like, hey, this is there. We're not attaching any necessarily like religious beliefs to this. You don't have to subscribe to any sort of belief system other than there's like a greater good within you that exists. How do you describe, or what is your philosophy on sort of spirit at work? What does that look like? To me, I'm hearing a lot of just like humanity, like, connecting with humanity, but what's your personal philosophy on that?
What comes to mind with the question you're asking is, I see a lot of chatter on LinkedIn about you should be able to be your authentic self at work. How can we be our authentic selves at work? There's a lot of talk about that. And this is the one space or the wave that I think is coming, where it helps you bring your full self to work, is whatever you believe in spiritually. So it can be what you just said. Maybe it's just, I believe that I have this place of greater good within me. Or it could be, I believe in this higher power. And bringing that to the workplace is part of bringing your full authentic self to the space. And I think it's been, well, I know it's been frowned upon because in the past, human resources departments, they don't want to touch religion, right? Because they're afraid to get sued. So religion and that part of who you were has kind of been shut down. And it's just like, we're not allowed to talk about any of this. So I think through that, a piece of everyone got shut down spiritually that they weren't bringing to the workplace. Well, guess what else got shut down? Creativity, innovation, being able to connect with others about who you really are.
I think it's that, mind, body, spirit integration. Like you mentioned the hierarchy, right? Of like being aware of our physicality, the emotional intelligence is really being aware a lot of what our mind and reaction and sort of, what is our reactionary response versus maybe our more conscious response. And then, spirit is just that higher attunement. And I think that we're doing a better job, I should say, of making sure that we're bringing mindfulness programs in and that, we're trying to help people with stress management. But I do think that burnout is a byproduct of abandoning the soul or the spirit of who we are. And to me, that feeling of apathy is so much worse than like feeling frustrated or angry, because at least there's still some passion behind that. But like if we just get to apathy, we really truly hit burnout. And I think to me, it is the soul of who we are. The spirit of who we are is just completely void in the work that we're doing.
For spirituality, for me, it's like I want to do work for the greater good, and I want to seek a deeper sense of meaning in life. One of my favorite definitions of spiritual intelligence is the ability to make wise and compassionate decisions and maintain inner peace, even when I'm under great stress. The ability to make wise and compassionate decisions and maintain inner peace, even when I'm under great stress. And for me, and for anyone that steps into the Create Magic at Work world, that's what skill building and a lot of these skills will give you a larger percentage of time. And it's not easy all the time. Sometimes, I shouldn't even say sometimes. Okay, let me share a story. So in 2021, I was like, oh, I'm going to skill build in skill 20, and I'm going to be a calming and healing presence. And that's my skill for the year. And I was so excited, and I was like, I'm going to be a calming and healing presence at like level 5, throughout 2021. I'm going to do this. I thought it was going to be amazing. I thought I was going to feel like calm and like, healing the whole year. That was the worst year ever. Because like I was like tested so many times by the universe, right? Like I threw that down and the universe was like, cool, let's give you some opportunities to practice this. And I had a lot of opportunities to practice. And I had to keep reminding myself, thank you. Thank you for the lesson. Thank you for the practice. I messed up today, but I look forward to practicing tomorrow. And one of my other learning moments too, it just hit me at a whole other layer, a whole other level, was I don't have to be this zened out, meditating yogi in a cave all the time to be a calming and healing presence. Like my biggest aha from practicing that was, as long as I show up operating from my higher self, that's enough to be a calming and healing presence. And that will call you just to operate from your higher self a little bit more. And we'll all rise together in that way. All right, it's time for a fun, playful, quick break. And it's time for you to discover your spiritual intelligence at work. So, over here at Create Magic at Work, we are not just a great podcast. We are an executive coaching firm, a team dedicated to helping leaders like you create healthier, more fulfilling workplaces. Whether it's through private coaching, transformative workshops, or impactful keynotes, we're here to help support your journey to have less drama and stress and more magical moments in your life. So have a little fun. Take our quick quiz in the show notes and see where you stand. Discover your spiritual intelligence at work. Click on the link in the show notes and reach out to us for support if you need it. Sending magic to you.
I think it's good reminders of like on the path to learning anything, to skill building, right? That was your goal with skill building, is like, if it ain't hurting, it ain't changing. It's like there's discomfort. It is part of like skin in your nose. Sometimes we skin our face, but that's part of building the muscle where we are just kind of in it and we become it. It becomes just a part of who we are and we don't have to kind of struggle or remind ourselves. And another part of learning is screwing it up, is like, give yourself permission to be like, oh shit, I got the lesson after I did it wrong. That level of awareness is really important in our own growth. When you look at that, there's 21 skills. So this is an assessment that people can take. They can take it with you. There's an opportunity to hop on your website. They can take it online. Leadership teams could take it together. When you're looking at these 21 skill sets, how do people know? Is it sort of like stacked ranked, or will it tell them here are the ones that we recommend you skill build for your success or to tap into your highest self? How do people get the feedback on what they need to work on?
Yeah, so it tells you where you're at from a level 0 to a level 5 on each skill. And it does not recommend what you work on. That's for you to determine on your own or with me as your coach, but we will dive into what resonates most with you. If you don't care about a skill, if you're like, I don't even really care about that, perfect. We don't have to dive into that. Also, I really don't care about the scores too much. It's like a totally different assessment. I tell my clients that taking the assessment is like a spiritual experience in itself. And you should really take it at a time where it's quiet, light a candle, you feel really tapped in, because just taking the assessment is an experience itself. It's not like you're going to hop on and fill out some quiz real quick and use that to really get some insights as you're going through it. I don't really care what the scores are. They might show a blueprint of where you are today in your life, but that might be different a month from now, and that's okay. If you get a 0, everyone's programmed to kind of like hone in on the zeros if they come back. Like, oh, I want to talk about this 0. I mean, in the SQ coaching group, we call them precious zeros. It's like they're just an opportunity for rich conversation. You reminded me in the beginning of our conversation, you were talking about, I can't remember where you were talking about, guys. Like, oh, she's talking about skill 12, which is your commitment to spiritual growth. And that's the most common 0 in the SQ assessment. And it's a really cool 0 to get. Yeah, there's some like deep dive fun that you can do with that one.
But I'd like to just really create a understanding of how do we know when we're operating from ego versus when we're operating from our highest best self? What are the indicators that we might see in like what we're thinking, feeling, or how we're responding?
Defensiveness, protection. I want to protect myself. I am separate from you. Fear. I'm afraid. On the surface, maybe irritability, anger, exploring what those things are a little bit more, and taking a moment to think about, why am I operating this way? And is there a better way? Can I reframe situations that have a little bit more grace for others? If I really tapped into when I'm feeling my most compassionate and wise, what would that inner voice say to me? That's how I would describe ego versus higher self. And I have a lot of clients that score very, very high on operating from higher self, on their awareness of their ego versus their higher self, on seeking guidance from their higher self, very level fives. And even in those moments, the ego never goes away, and it's not an evil thing to worry about. It's there to protect you. We just want to explore if it's showing up when we're really not needing protection. And the ultimate is if we can put our ego in service to our higher self.
I love that phrase. We see it a lot. I mean, for all of us, our ego is alive and well in conflict and the things that push our buttons. And then there's a story that's created, and then we live within this story. And it's really difficult to get to whatever is ideal on the other side. Collaboration, maybe it's just peace on the other side. Maybe it's hopping off a Cartman drama triangle. I know my ego gets hooked when I'm driving most often. And I like to say, that I'm 80% love and light and 20% petty as hell. And my petty gets hooked when I'm driving. The ego takes hold, and some jerk driving slow in the fast lane, I do all of my best versions of sign language with that person. But that's my reaction. And then I am very aware of what's happened, and I do try my best to create a more loving response, even if that person doesn't know it. Like I feel like it's the connection to the greater good knows that I'm like, oh, I apologize. I was not in alignment I was not in alignment with love in that moment. Is it fair to say that the ego and higher self, like ego can be aligned with fear and higher self can be more aligned with love? Or is that too simplistic?
No, I think that's fair to say for sure, because your higher self is the place within you that comes from love. Yeah, so that's absolutely fair to say.
There's a lot I love again, so many people being called to teach conscious stuff in different ways because we need a ton of voices. We need a lot of ways that it's being brought out there. Different things resonate with different people. And Renee Smith's work on, teaching love at work. I love that she's like, hey, love isn't just like, I love you and I'm here to support you. Love is like, we've got to have a tough conversation. Love is creativity. It is allowing people to dream. Like love shows up in so many different ways. So I'm really fascinated by the spiritual intelligence and the ability for people to learn how to lean into that space within themselves more often.
I think that the wisdom and compassion piece resonates a lot with me. Like, how do I work throughout my life? How do I operate from a place of wisdom and compassion in as much as I can? And yes, that includes love. I often don't share it as much. I see it coming up quite a bit in the workspace now, like with the work that you're doing. It's funny because when people interview me, they're like, how are you talking about spirituality in the workplace? And I'm like, how am I not? This is like what this is. Like, hello. But then I look at you and I'm like, how are you all talking about love in the workplace? But it's the same thing. It's just the language we're using. You mentioned it earlier in our conversation that sometimes people have hesitation about spirituality because perhaps they might have some religious trauma from the past. You didn't say that part, but I'm just like taking it a step further. And I think the same thing happens when the word love is used, that maybe some people have some hesitation because they have a lot of feelings wrapped up in what love means because they've been taught that it means some things that don't feel that great. So if we can, that's why I emphasize the faith neutral part, because if we can pull all of that away and just look at the pure stuff, I think that's really helpful.
There's a phrase that you use as well. I know that you ask your guest on your podcast, but I'd love to know you talk about being a quantum leader, becoming a quantum leader. And this work in spiritual intelligence, the work you're doing in Create Magic at Work is certainly a part of helping people, lean into that. What does it mean? Because we have tons of leaders who listen to the Conscious Habit podcast. What does it mean to lead from a quantum space, to be a quantum leader?
Yeah, a quantum leader is someone that understands they need to operate from a spiritually intelligent space. A quantum leader is someone that understands that business is not just for profit, but for the greater good. And they make leadership and business decisions from that space with the understanding that these decisions ripple out into our communities, the planet, and humanity as a whole.
Understanding their ripple effect on all things that they touch. I think that's so good for people to keep in mind because we're often only focused on the 6 inches in front of our face and how it directly affects us. But all things are connected. That's not even necessarily a spiritual belief. We just know scientifically, that everything's energy and it's all connected somehow, neither created nor destroyed. I shared this on a podcast. Desiree Garcia and I, we do the High Five Tribe retreats together, and we're collaborating on monthly episodes. And I shared with her that there was this thing that hit me recently, and I think I was probably in frustration with my husband because there is my greatest mirror on whether or not I am aligned with my highest best self is my husband of
Totally.
22 years, because the more frustrated I am with him, the more I'm like, that's really a mirror back to me on some of the, I apologize. I'm not aligned. But I think probably in a frustration with my spouse, because that there is that human nature there, I went, oh, damn, what happens with this anger when I express it? Because it's not created or destroyed, where does it go? Did I just contribute to that earthquake that happened? And when I express love, where does that go? Does that contribute to some miracle that cannot be explained? Like what happens to that which is expressed through us? That is, to me, had such a like, oh, okay, doesn't mean I can't have other emotions, but I want to be very conscious and aware of what I am doing in the quantum with those emotions.
Yeah, that was an amazing insight. I want to add, if I may, when we have those insights, I think it's important to have some radical self forgiveness too, because we could get into this beating ourselves up for not being as spiritually centered or aligned, like you said, as we thought we were. And so it's really important that you're like, oh, I maybe I acted in a way that wasn't aligned with who I am, or I expressed anger in a way that I didn't really want to. I always say recognize, repair, recover, radical self-forgiveness. Because when we're on the spiritual path, sometimes we can start beating ourselves up for being human. And that's not a good feeling.
It's a good reminder to just compassion because we are human. We can't outrun our humanness. All of the emotions come to us. There is this balance between like, what can I control and not strive for? To me, I feel like this spiritual journey is more of a remembering, not a getting to. It's more like, oh, what's all of the belief systems that have covered up the truth, the wisdom that's always been there? How do I get rid of all of that stuff? But along the way, just knowing like we can't outrun our humanity. We are not monks and, living on a mountain somewhere who just sit in mindfulness all day long. We've got all kinds of shit that's coming and going. But I guess that's the balance, right? That's the 80-20, 80% love and light and 20% petty. It's just kind of part of the gig.
That's a pretty good percentage, really. I mean,
I give myself too much credit, like for real. I'm sure my husband would be like, 20%? So, okay, to kind of wrap us up for today, and the time always flies by so fast. Like that's how you know you're in absolute flow and hanging out with your people and getting really good insights. Talking to the leaders, is there one of the spiritually intelligent? I know you said like, hey, it's really all up to everybody. Is there one that seems to resonate the most with folks that we might leave our listeners with to just contemplate?
I think we talked a lot about like the ego versus higher self, right? Like those are like the foundational ones. There's three that tie to that. One that I'm really feeling like a lot of people are resonating with lately is aligning with the ebb and flow of life. And I wrote a quick little article recently that I posted that work-life balance is a myth, because striving for this constant balance is exhausting. That's not really a good feeling, beating yourself up that you don't have work-life balance or that you're trying to hit some elusive balance that like you never can feel or achieve, it feels exhausting to me. So I offer aligning with the ebb and flow of life as something to look to instead of that, something to practice, something to explore. And a lot of pieces with aligning with the ebb and flow of life, especially people that are really into their spirituality. One of the moments that I see happen, it's happened to myself, are practicing discerning whether something arrives in your life that is a gift or a distraction. Because I've personally fell into a trap where I thought everything arriving in my life was a gift, right? Oh, universe brought me this. Yeah, let me work with this person. Like it's up, but no, 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 no. We still every day have to practice discernment. And part of that is, am I being distracted, or is this something that I should pursue?
Well, now I need to know how you decide. What's the determination between the two, discernment and distraction?
Yeah. So that would go back into seeking guidance from higher self, pausing. Is this your, like, I'm thinking of people that just, I'm generalizing again, that, oh, I want a promotion. I want this job. I want to work for this company. Well, why? Like, it's just pursue, pursue, pursue. And is this really a gift, or is this a distraction from your real purpose, from what you're really meant here, here to do, from living your most fulfilling life? Is this really what that looks like for you? Is this what inner peace looks like for you? Because I don't think we're seeking happiness. We're human. We're not going to be happy all the time. I think we're seeking inner peace, and to maintain inner peace even during stressful times.
What a good like little cherry on top. Amy Lynn, tell our listeners, what are the best ways to find you? Tell us about your podcast, where we can find you on socials, and how they learn more about the spiritual intelligence assessment.
Everything's on createmagicatwork.net. So it's .net. And I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit under Amy Lynn Durham. You will see lots of resources on both the website and on LinkedIn. And the podcast, Create Magic at Work, is really resonating with people. And we weave spiritual intelligence through every single episode. And it's a lot of fun. And there's some really amazing people that I talk to about that in the workplace. And don't forget to check out the shop for fun on Create Magic at Work, because the journal prompt cards are there, the journal, they have really cute like illustrations that have deep symbolism in them. I use an illustrator that's super magical. So check it out and bring a little magic to your life in that way.
I love that. And I'm so excited to listen to season 6 now on the People Forward Network.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Awesome. Amy Lynn, thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing your wisdom.
Yeah, this has been amazing. Thank you, Amy. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming back every week to listen to a new episode of Create Magic at Work, and really helping to support and advocate for healthy leaders, workplaces, and lives for all of us. If you want any information on how to connect with me, click on the link in the show notes. You'll get access to all of the social media links for Create Magic at Work. Stay following along for more amazing episodes where we help you improve productivity and profitability in the workplace and decrease stress. Sending magic to everyone, and see you next time.